Okay, so if I remember correctly, we were messing around with two different observers last time, where we created one core prototype and we left a core prototype empty. We just used this guy to create instances of nothingness. And then we needed to add these guys to the scene. So each of these observers we gave our own behaviors to. So one of these observers talks about how many guys respond. The other observer uh, we took stuff out. What were we trying to do right at the end? Do something with smileys, maybe?
We had those growing and then.
Oh, that's right. And they weren't hitting each other. So it was a hitbox issue. Let's just look at that again real quick because I want to go on. I was segueing into hitboxes, but the segue didn't work out that well. Okay, so in our smileys, every 1 second we told this guy to get a little bit bigger than it used to be. Then we had a rule where every smiley would determine if he hit an actor of another smiley, and then we would destroy the actor. So as soon as they hit, they should get destroyed, but that's what's not happening right now. And I think right at the end of class, you suggested that maybe we, and actually let's just do this. Let's just say after 1 second, let's say these guys triple in size. Let's just see what that looks like. Okay, that's after 1 second. Now, move these guys a little bit farther away from each other. I'm going to modify one of these dudes. And I'm going to add a rule for this particular actor, which is the one that was on the left side of the screen. If he receives the event touch inside, so if we click on him, he will start traveling to the right. So we're going to change attribute, move. So this smiley's motion, linear velocity on X, and let's make that 200. So when we play this, only this guy, when we click on him, should start heading this direction. Okay, so they got destroyed then. So what seems to be happening, all right, I think we can, this will be, so when we just had them growing, that wasn't allowing for the rule to fire that determined whether they were overlapping or colliding. Because we're proving right here that they're bigger in size now, but as soon as I click this guy, when he hit the new expanded size, it got destroyed. So it must be that that event was not actually occurring. Is there a way we can force it to occur? Well, we just did force it to occur. Question is why can't we have this guy say every 1 second double in size, and then we're asking this question. I think if I remember correctly, we tried to throw this question in here that says after we double it in size, then check did we collide with another actor, and it still wasn't working, correct? So these guys keep doubling in size. Oh, I was editing just the one prototype, but still, he didn't collide. So it didn't really make a difference. So are collisions only detected as a result of movement? I think that's what you were saying at the end, move them over by 1, right? So let's just revert this guy back. I reverted him back. So we'll go ahead and put these guys next to each other. We will say after 1 second, triple in size. So that's what those guys do right now. Okay, let's just leave it at that. Make sure that looks the way it should. These guys can overlap. Okay, definitely overlapped. And then what we want to do is we want to have one of the guys shift over just by one pixel. And can we actually do that as part of the timer? Let's just go in here and say change attribute. This particular smiley position on X is equal to whatever it currently is plus 1, let's say. They'll both move, but they should still be overlapping. My guess is they won't get destroyed on this because we're changing position as opposed to changing velocity. And velocity must be only when collisions can occur. I guess we're going to find out here. So after 1 second, we'll triple the guy in size, which will definitely make them overlap each other. And then we'll shift the guy over by 1 pixel and see if they destroy each other then. My gut feeling is they won't. But if we change the linear velocity, I think they will. What the heck was that? All right, no, they did get destroyed. So just moving at that 1 pixel. So movement in the scene seems to trigger collision rules. Fair enough. Let's leave it at that for right now. Okay, so I want to start talking about these hitboxes, how these guys connected. So we saw, even though the rule didn't fire exactly like we wanted it to fire, that when these guys got bigger in size, when we did shift one of them over, as soon as they overlapped with the new size of it, that was the new hitbox. But the hitbox is going to be a square around this guy initially. And we'll look at this from an actor perspective here in a second. So these guys will always have a square around them by default, which means that if technically we had this guy bumping down here, and let me just show that real quick. Let's position these guys accordingly. We're going to just change this guy. We'll add the rule that if this guy receives a touch inside, we'll change the attribute his motion linear velocity on X goes to 200. So we just changed that one dude. So now they're bigger. I might need to lift this guy up a little bit. We'll find out. Yep, he missed. Oh, am I still lying? Or is it circle right now? Inside of our smileys, if you go in here, is it under graphics or physics? Under physics, we have something called collision shape. And right now it's set up as a rectangle. But how close does it actually get to the guy? Let's go back up here. Okay, yeah, that showed it. So the rectangle must hug it pretty close. So right now there's a rectangle going around this guy. That's a line coming right out here, then going up along this, then coming in here. So if I can make this guy impact here, that's technically hitting the character. Okay, so that's the hitbox for him. So if I click this, we see that it died, even though it looked like it was in the black area. So we can, in Game Salad, we can choose 2 different hitbox types. We can choose a circle or we can choose a rectangle. So I'll go ahead and change these guys to circles. Okay, and notice that it not only did it not destroy him when he originally hit, but it actually was a center point. So it was a circle off the center point. Let me just refresh this real quick. So we see this guy originally has a hitbox that looks like this, correct? So it's off the center, and it only goes, since this guy is not circular, it's only going to go to the extent of its shorter distance. So that means we have a circle kind of right like this from the core. So not until it gets into that area will it actually destroy the guy. So it looked like the top of his head kind of hit the circle. All right, so a couple different choices for dealing with hitboxes. Now, where we can play with this a little bit, and I kind of want to erase this version of our game. And we're going to go to something a little bit more practical. I'll get rid of our observers for right now as well. Okay, we're going to create a bowling game. Okay, so we're going to be bowling towards some bowling pins. And our bowling pins are going to be set up, and we think about those, and for right now we're just going to actually have 3 bowling pins rather than try to set it up as something real complex. Our bowling pins don't follow either of those shapes. Okay, so now we're talking about 2 actors in the scene. How do they bump into each other? So we're asking questions. Have these guys hit each other? Have they hit each other? Have they hit each other? And that's happening every single time through this game loop. And we want it to look realistic. So think about this from the perspective of writing a game for an iPhone or something like that. So let's go ahead and get a couple of bowling pins out here. So I'm going to create a actor. We're going to call this guy a pin. We'll drag one out on the screen, and let's just adjust his size, and we're going to say pins look like that. And let's get his size. So we'll say 35 by 45. That'll be clean enough. So that's what a pin looks like. So I'll change the size in our original. So this is 35 by 45, a little bit taller than they are wide. So now when I drag these guys out there, they'll be that new size. Oh. There's 1. There's 2. And there's 3. All right, and then we'll also go ahead and have our bowling ball. And we'll add some graphics to this shortly, but for right now, that's our bowling ball. Okay, now when we start our game, we're going to go ahead and just click here, and the guy will start heading upward. So we'll teach our ball to listen for a touch event, where we click on him, and what are we going to do? We are going to, for right now, let's just deal with linear velocity. When we actually start doing this, we're going to deal with some acceleration stuff. So we're going to change this ball's motion, linear velocity on Y to be 200. Okay, so now our bowling ball flies in a straight line. That's, for those of you who've bowled, usually put some sort of curve on it, and we'll try to mess with that. Okay, but right now what we want to happen is we want the bowling ball to impact pins. We want this to be able to happen. Now when a bowling ball hits a pin, what should happen? Well, the stupid version of the game would be what? Just gets destroyed? Okay, but what should actually happen? When you're bowling and you hit a bowling pin with the bowling ball, what happens to the pin? Okay. It flies somewhere, right? It falls over and goes dragging off someplace, things like that. What happens to the bowling ball? It somehow gets its direction adjusted, right? Because now there's been an impact. All right, so for going back to the stupid version of this, we'll say whenever a pin, And this comes down to who is looking for the events. So whenever we're creating events, you want to think about it from the different actors' perspectives. So in this case, if I'm a pin and I get hit by a bowling ball, what do I want to happen? Well, I should go flying in some sort of direction. Then you might put another rule from the bowling ball's perspective. If I'm a bowling ball and I impact a pin, what should happen to me? Okay, so we're actually going to end up making two separate rules. What happens if I'm a pin and I collide with a bowling ball? What happens if I'm a bowling ball and I collide with a pin? Make sense? So we want two separate things to happen. So we're going to go ahead and start with the pin. And we're going to create a rule that says this dude, this particular pin, overlaps or collides with an actor of type ball. If that occurs, we want something to happen. And what do we want to happen? Well, we'll make this look stupid initially. This will be like our old 8-bit video games that were really, actually probably worse than that. Like if somebody were to write a bowling game for like one of those TI graphing calculators, this would be what those things would look like. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll change the attribute for this pin. And we're going to change his motions, linear velocity on Y to be, let's say, something like 300. Okay? So whenever a pin gets hit by a bowling ball, their linear velocity goes to 300. So we'll go ahead and run this. All right, so the first pin was a very direct shot. It was like very direct. Pin flew by the other two pins. Okay? And nothing happened. Now, when we hit a pin, shouldn't that pin kind of, because pins are curved, right? Shouldn't it kind of go in a different direction? Potentially. It's probably rare for a pin to literally at a 90-degree angle fly straight back, right? Okay, it happens, but it's not going to be a common case. So let's go and look now. Go back to the pin's perspective. Let's see. Let's see what happens if we use I want to do accelerate first. We're actually just going to, instead of faking it, we're going to go right into the physics of it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say, well, we're not even going to do this in a rule. We're going to say that a pin knows how to collide with an actor of type ball. Okay? So this is a separate behavior. We're not asking the question. We're not asking, did you collide with the bowling ball? We're saying, you now have the behavior that has incorporated the physics into it of what it means to collide with the bowling ball. All right? So we're going to go ahead and hit preview on this. Okay, so same thing happens. Notice our bowling ball spinning a little funny. We kind of nudged a pin there. So now you see how physics are taking into account a little bit?
Wouldn't you also have to make another collide rule for the pins too? To collide with the pins?
We're going to want to do that. Yep. So pins don't just know how to collide with bowling balls. They also collide with other pins. Now in that particular case, we didn't see anything happen. You see this? There's a lot of kinetic energy here, and this pin's just kind of slowly floating off the screen, but we're starting to see physics play into account here. All right. So as he said, we might want to add another collide rule that says that a pin knows how to collide with other pins. Now, that's not going to make a difference in our current scene because of the way this guy flies. What I'm going to do here is we'll move our bowling ball over a little bit. We'll go ahead and run this. Okay, so now our pins can start colliding with each other. That's starting to use some of the abilities of the game engine to simulate physics. rather than us having to fake it. Because if we're asking the question, did I bump into a pin? Or if the pin is asking the question, did I bump into a bowling ball? Then we're having to, if we're going to respond directly, we have to decide what should that mean for me? And that's a physics problem, right? So if somebody bumps me on this side, what should happen to me? I have to think about the different direction I'm going to be flying, that kind of crap. Okay? So utilizing the game engine, utilizing this collide behavior allows us to treat this a little bit differently. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our ball and I'm going to change his hitbox to a circle. So this is under his physics. So now our bowling ball is circular. Okay, we got a little bit different reaction because of how it hit. Notice this guy didn't go anywhere. The previous time something happened to him, right? Okay. Now, would you say, based on how real bowling works, when this bowling ball hits this pin, the bowling ball has a lot more energy, a lot more mass to it than a pin does, right? The pins usually go flying, and the bowling ball, yes, it changes direction a little bit, but right now it's kind of like two cars hitting each other. That bowling ball is really being redirected. Okay, so we need to mess around with the different types of these, the masses of these items. So we're going to go into bowling ball. We're going to go into physics. We have a couple of things. For instance, one thing is bounciness. We could also mess with density. But we're going to change the bowling ball's bounciness to 0. Oh, that's not going to have an effect because the pin, we didn't change his bounciness. Okay, so these guys now aren't as elastic. Okay, so they don't bounce off each other like a rubber ball type thing. So right off the bat, that probably looked a little bit more realistic, right? We still haven't really handled this idea of a pin and a bowling ball acting different. Let's go back. I think we can change the bowling ball's bounciness to -1 and change the pin's bounciness to a 1. And I think that should give us a fairly violent, and we can also mess with density. So we're going to change the bounciness of the bowling ball to 0, the worst, so 0, 1, 2, I think is the bounciness settings. So bowling ball will be 0, pin will be 2. Let's see if these guys look different. Okay, so definitely the pin flew harder that time, right? But the bowling ball still bounced off because they share the same density currently. So now we're going to up the density on our bowling ball. So let's change it to a 2. It's twice as dense as the pin. Okay, didn't bounce off quite as drastically. Go up to, so let's make it 4 times as dense as the pin. Now it's kind of steamrolling it, right? Now realistically, so I think we're kind of getting close here, right? So let's maybe make it 8 times. That might be too powerful, but that's what we're looking for here. Starts looking kind of realistic-y. Okay? Because certainly we see now that the bowling ball isn't changing direction too much. You know, that feels like it might be somewhat in the range of being realistic, and the pins went flying off, things like that. Okay. Now, this bowling ball, what we want to do, we'll just go with it. We want to see who hits what. So when this ball hits that first pin, I think we saw the center pin took out this pin over here, but the bowling ball took out the pin over here. That's starting to feel kind of like bowling, right? Okay, so now what we want to do, now that we have some action to it, let's go ahead and let's get ourselves a couple of graphics. Bowling ball. Okay. Actually, we can go back and just use our smiley face for a bowling ball. So that makes perfect sense, right? All right, he's too big currently. Okay, we decided these guys would have a, how big was our bowling ball before? Is it 50 by 50? That looks legit enough. Okay, and we already had changed this bowling ball's hitbox to a circle, right? So it has kind of almost a blunted impact, so it's starting to look kind of like bowling. Now we definitely need to get some bowling pins. Now what kind of pins would this angry face run into? Can we come up with something more interesting than just a plain old bowling pin? What are we bowling for? This could be funny. Want to bowl for Mario? I do already have a Mario. Is that our bowling pin? Yeah, that could work actually. So we'll change this guy's size. I think what we have, he was, we actually want to make him probably a little bit, let's do 25 wide by 45 tall. Something like that. That kind of bowling pin shaped. Okay, now right now it's still a rectangle. So I'll put a couple of skinny Marios out here. It's too small. Uh-oh. Unconfirmed. So 35, maybe 55. Keep the better or still too small? $55, $75. All right, that's bowling pin Mario. Let's go with that. Actually, we probably should have left them smaller, but whatever. All right, so now what we need to do is we're going to go to our scenes attributes. And right now our scene size is a width of 568 and a height of 320. So right now our height is our limiting factor here, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make the height, let's go like 800. And we'll make the width 300. And we'll move everything over here. I can't highlight everything at once. That's fine. Well, before I do anything else then, I'm going to go to the camera. The camera has an origin, wherever it's currently located. So we have the camera at 0, 0, which I think last time you said is that bottom left-hand corner. Okay. The camera also has a size. We're going to set the camera's width to be 300 to match the size of our game. And we're going to set the camera's height to be 800. All right. Now we're going to put these Marios, we want to see how these boxes work here. Put these Marios a little bit off the screen, well, at least a little bit beyond this, this box. Give us one more Mario. What happened there? Oh, I'm not using actors. I'm just dragging images out there. Don't do that. I was showing you what not to do. All right. Just going to get rid of these guys and redraw it. So I started creating new types of actors by dragging stuff out on the screen. Oh, I deleted Mario. Perfect. Or not? He's not coming back. Okay, we have an opportunity to switch up our. He was going to make a bad bowling pin, anyways. All right, so let's go with these guys. Here we got a little stick figure. Actually, we're probably not going to be able to see that. So let's just go with a normal bowling pin. Here's a good bowling pin for us. So we'll get our bowling pin. We'll just alpha this out just a little bit. All right, and we'll go ahead and save that. So we have bowlingpin.png. Go back to Game Salad. Go ahead and drag that guy in there. We'll delete Mario's, even though we'll have to put the rules back in. So now we have a bowling pin. I need to adjust the size there a little bit. All right, so right now it's 76 wide by 256, so we want to make it maybe 45 tall, 55 tall. Let's do that. Just want to see what the adjust size would be. So if you make it, actually let's do 75 tall by 22 wide. 75, 22. 75, 22. So I just kept the aspect ratio for it. Come on. Make sure you save often with Game Salad. So we'll drag a couple bowling pins out here. We'll worry about them looking better lined up wise later. All right, so we have our bowling pins, we have our bowling ball, and now we're going to go ahead and hit play. And we see where our camera is. What we see on the screen, see it's currently set up as an iPhone 5 landscape. Well, I can set up to iPhone 5 portrait. It changes the camera angle a little bit. I can go to some of these other ones. I can go full screen. MacBook full screen. Or I can change my resolution. I'm going to go ahead and change my resolution to be a width of 300 and a height of 800. We'll hit OK. That's this 300 by 800 one. Okay, now notice when that guy went, what happened? We saw our dude disappear. If you come back in here, we have these lines. This is where our camera is right now. All right, we can't see all the way down the path. So we need to associate a camera with this guy, at least for right now, for how we're going to pull this off. So we're going to go in, to our ball. And we're going to add a behavior to him. So we have an actor, a behavior called control camera. We can only have one of these in our scene at a time. We associate it with an actor and the camera will follow this guy. Okay, fair enough. Okay, now he is rolling. Now we had removed the behavior since my bowling pins no longer act like bowling pins. Okay, but we saw that maybe he's we kind of want him to drag behind a little bit. Let's see. We're going to change our camera. So the camera automatically follows this guy. We're going to go to our scene. Is this scene? Yeah. We have our camera, we have our size, then we have our tracking area. Okay, we're going to track. Let's do a height of, let's see, will this, actually let's try to track it at 800. Is that gonna, I think that's what we want to change. No, it won't start following. We need to lower it now. So I need to make it less. Scene, camera. Let's track on 100. Okay, so now we'll see the pins come up a little bit differently. So we're dragging behind. And we'll go ahead and add the impacts back into our pins. I think the Mac, doesn't it show us apps using significant energy? Games. Does it tell me how much energy? Only 90. What was that? That's the energy impact. Give me a percentage. All right, so we're going to teach our bowling pins how to collide again. Now notice that before I do this, well, here, I'll go ahead and put it in here since it might take some time. We're going to say a bowling pin knows how to collide with the ball. A bowling pin also knows how to collide with other pins. So those are the two things there. But now when I go back, I'll save again. Notice that our ball already had the collide behavior in there before. Okay? But it's gone. Why did it go away? Well, when I deleted the original pin, you can no longer collide with that particular actor. So we need to go ahead and throw that back in. Collide with a bowling pin. Okay, so now these guys know how to collide with each other again. Okay, so kind of seemingly bowling again. Fine. Wouldn't it be nice if we could see more of this screen? Okay, so let's look at what we have to do to our camera to make that work. So this whole section here is our camera. I'm sorry. This whole section here is our camera. So we're going to say our camera has a height of 800. Okay, and we're going to say our camera has a width of 300. And we're going to say the tracking area again is 100, and we won't have to deal with tracking too much here anyways, since I made the camera bigger. Go ahead and run this. So our scene is still the iPhone 5 landscape, but let's go ahead and change it to our, didn't we have our custom one in here? Hmm. 800 by 300 wide. Okay. So now, kind of bowling gamey. But now notice that this was 800 tall, but our guys were actually closer to each other than that. Why is that? Hold on, I can spread this out more. Size of our canvas is 300 wide, 800 tall. Not doing gravity yet. Tracking area doesn't even matter in this case since he's never leaving the scene. Well, it should stretch out more than that based on the current settings. Say this again? Oh, is it going back to... Oh, we can set it there. That's fine. That just changes the platform. I don't think that's gonna... So now it looks like the size of a Mac screen-ish. I'm going to change the width back to 300, height of 800. Go back to our camera. Camera is going to have a size 300 by 800. And tracking area, we'll also set it 300 by 800 since we don't need it to drag anymore. Move this guy all the way to the bottom. Save that. Oh, is it because we have this 50% scaling thing? Those guys are way too close to each other. Maybe it's just their preview. That it's only able to preview it in a window like this. That's for screenshots. Well, doesn't really matter for what we're doing here. So now we have our game that can go and hit a strike. something like that. Okay? Now, what we ultimately want to happen is we want to incorporate some scoring and things like that into the game. And since we're probably going to end up turning this on its side next time, but for homework for next class, create, it could be a bowling game, it could be whatever you want, but really something that deals with hitboxes. I would suggest duplicate what I've done here, where you create some number of bowling pins, and the pins know how to interact with each other. The pins also know how to interact with a bowling ball, and a click or something makes the bowling ball fly towards the pins, and they should react appropriately. Okay? Oh, we almost missed a pin there. That one kind of rattled in the middle. All right, so do that for next class. Again, turn in screenshots of your running game, of your the behaviors for the pin, and your behaviors for your bowling ball. What we'll probably end up doing, since the preview only shows it like this, we'll turn it sideways for next class, which is going to be kind of segueing us towards our platformer type game like a Mario, where we're going and stuff comes up on us, that kind of stuff. All right, I'll see everybody on Friday.